Hi there, BookTube. It's Roz. I'm a little bit croaky, but I'm trying to deal with that with the hot toddy. So short slug, that'll help. But I wanted to make a quick review video of Cursed Bread by Sophie Mackintosh. This came out at the beginning of March this month in the UK, and I think is not quite out yet in North America. But it's one of the 16 books on the Women's Prize for Fiction long list, and it's got some mixed reactions, I think. So it felt like it would be useful to share my thoughts about it, and that might give you a better idea of whether or not you want to read this one. Mackintosh is a youngish, like mid-30s, Welsh author. This is her third novel. First one, The Water Cure, was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, I think. And before that, she'd published quite a number of short story collections and so on. It's short, as you can see, less than 200 pages, which I like, as you know, and was probably a good thing, because this is the sort of book that the style I don't think would sustain well over a longer book. It suits it to be short, because what you get is something quite intense, almost feverish in quality, but also kind of like episodic, including use of letters. It's got a protagonist, Elodie, who is your classic unreliable narrator. You know, she's looking back at the period running up to a kind of cataclysmic event in the village where she lived, and just really talking about the events that ran up to this incident, as it were. You come to know as a reader that the impact of this incident was kind of a poisoning, and meant that the villagers either died or became, psychotic, were having hallucinations and violent and all of that, which of course means that we don't know whether Elodie is not able to remember what really happened in the period before the incident, or is she deliberately giving a particular version of events, or is she giving a version that she believes is real, but we might have some reservations about, so real, as I say, classic unreliable narrator territory. And Elodie is such a interesting protagonist for me, in that we don't really know whether she's a tragic figure or a monstrous one. We get the feeling that her life before the big event, the poisoning or whatever it was quite desperate and depressed and dejected, and she was an unhappy person, but we can't really tell if she's kind of like a good person or an evil person, and does it matter? It's a bit of a mystery. Another sense in which it's a bit of a mystery is that you could very loosely describe this as a kind of whodunit, because all the way through the book we're getting kind of clues as to how did this poisoning happen and who is responsible. Was it accidental? Was it a malicious act? Was someone tricked into it? Things get dropped in, but we don't know. But basically the question is, how did most of the population of this rural French village that was just sort of recovering from the impact of World War II come to be poisoned or driven mad all at once, in effect? And one thing that is clear is, if you know the French, and it continues to this day, their sort of devotion to their daily freshly baked bread. It's like a civil right in France that you should be able to have freshly baked bread every day. But that means that if you want to cause, mayhem in a French community, one of the best ways to do it is going to be to mess with the village bakery. And that's, we think, what has happened. This book is a very sensual book. Sensual as in, we get the smells and the feelings, the what's it like to break the crust on some fresh bread? What's it, how does the crumb feel? The someone's kneading the dough, yeah, there's a kind of physicality about things in this book that is intense. It's also quite a sexual book, quite erotically charged a lot of the time, and not, there's kind of like, not so much explicit sex as, just like the touch of someone's hand and the frisson that can generate, how it feels to try on somebody else's clothes, or to offer them food and try and sort of push that into their mouths. There's a lot of violence in this book, explicit violence, someone jumping into a fire, but also hinted at or implicit or possible violence, and sort of cruel exploitation and sort of degradation of people. It conjures up village life really well, I think, and village attitudes to incomers, and the impact of, dropping a new couple into a settled community, the way gossip works in a village, the way people know everything about each other's lives, and yet there are still secrets, and the way those secrets kind of affect the whole community. But what I should say about this book, I think, is that, you never get a clear resolution of what's happening in this book. It's the fact that it's inspired by real life events in a village in southern France in 1951, when, 50 odd people were poisoned, and that was never fully explained. The real life inspiration for this kind of, for me, made sense of the idea that this shouldn't be a sort of neat, oh well, let's make up a story to explain how it happened. I didn't want all the loose ends to be tied up, because they weren't in real life either. So I'd say this is a book that is not going to win the Women's Prize for Fiction. I'm very sure of that. It's also a book that is absolutely not for everyone. Not everyone is going to enjoy this book. You absolutely don't read this book unless you're happy to just go along for the ride, I suppose, with something that is quite feverish and peculiar. You've got to be happy to be endlessly slightly befuddled as you go through it, and to never quite know where you are with the story, where you are with the characters. You never really know who's good or bad as a character. Is anyone, everyone is, uncertain and ambiguous. You never really know, as I say, if the narrator, Elodie, is telling us the truth, or remembering it properly, and you are not going to get a neat resolution. So all of that is absolutely fine with me, and I really enjoyed this book, and it's continued. I finished it a few days ago, and it's still kind of resonating in my head, and questions from it keep popping up again. But I would hope that, having heard this review, you would have a good idea of whether it's a book for you or not, and it may be not.